This is Kristen Daukas with 10 to 20 Parenting with the lovely Arminda Lindsay. And this is our first, what are we going to call this? 10 to 20 and 10 to 20?
Yeah, it's our first virtual book club meeting.
Right, or virtual anything, because I think we're going to try and do some interviews with different people down the road. But with the huge going-ons about the Hunger Games, we figured that we would dish, since Arminda and I both have read all the books feverishly, and we're anxiously waiting. We just put your reviews on the books as well as the movie on the 10 to 20 site, which were wonderful. So I like to start by getting to the end and just flat out, what was you walked out of the movie theater and your impression on the Hunger Games as a movie was?
I really liked it. That was my impression on the movie. I do think we should establish one thing. We're both moms of teenagers.
Yes.
And I think that's important, because having read the books, that was really my focus, and coming into the books to start with was, what is my daughter reading?
Yes.
And I wanted to understand that. Of course, as with everyone else who's picked up the books, you get sucked right in, and that leads to some conversation and questions that I think we're going to address today too. But as far as the movie adaptation, I give it a 10 out of 10. I think it was spot on. It's one of the best adaptations from a book that I have personally seen, and I'm a pretty big critic when it comes to movie from book adaptation.
Yes, and I will also say that too. The only reason why I picked up the books was because the rumor had been that my oldest, who is in the 7th grade, was supposed to have read them. I believe a portion of her 7th grade class did read them, but she was not in the block that was part of their curriculum. So the stunning thing for me is when the rooster read them. It was he loves to read. He is not the voracious reader that I used to be. Unfortunately, I used to read tons of books. Now I don't make the time for it. That being said, he zipped through all 3 of them in probably about a week and a half, which is a record for him. So, but yes, we are both parents to teens and tweens, which is the whole reason why we're here to begin with. But so let's talk a little bit about what we thought of the adaptation, because I thought it was very well done. I don't know how many pages off the top of my head the book is. Obviously, it's kind of hard to put that much information from a book that is very, very detailed into a movie at 2 hours and 24 minutes, I believe it was. Yeah. The big hullabaloo last week was from the parents, and on my Facebook wall everywhere was, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want my kid to see this because of the violence. It is and my take on that was, those that were that aware of it, my first question to them was, did you read the book? Because if you had read the book, you would know that it is very violent. I think it's the mental stigma that it's that age group killing their own.
Well, and truthfully, Kristen, that was probably my biggest concern from the book to the movie. I was so curious how they were going to translate the violence from the book to the big screen. Now, in my mind, I was thinking they would have to tone it down in some way in order to maintain the target demographic, which was the tween to teen age group, and they did. I don't remember. Was it a PG-13 rating?
It was a PG-13 rating, and ironically, a good friend of ours manages the Grand here in Winston-Salem, and we were talking to him whenever we were walking in, and he had made the comment that several people coming out said to him that they thought it should be a rated R. I didn't think it deserved an R.
I don't either. I think that they maintained the integrity of the message without going over the line and being gratuitously violent.
Absolutely.
Actually, I felt like the books were. I felt like the books were gratuitously violent. And so for me, it was a refreshing change from the books, where we didn't have the gory details, where we understood what was happening, when it was happening, without being subjected to watch it, listen to it, and be really tortured by the events themselves, which from the book, we're inside Katniss's head. It's a first-person perspective, and that was her real experience. The movie is not told first-person, and it is through her eyes in a sense, but we really get that more omniscient removal from inside of her. And I actually thought it was really, really well done. so that we weren't really, it wasn't so in your face as the book was.
Did you think one of my issues is how much time they spent leading up to the games? I felt that for there to have been so much time leading up to the actual games themselves, and we'll go into the whole character development piece of it as well, I think there was a lot of opportunities missed to further develop the characters. I mean, I thought it was just about 1 hour and 10 minutes before they even got to the games? That's a lot of lead up time for what truly is the theme of the whole movie.
Yeah, I think you bring up a valid point, and I guess I have some opinions, shockingly, about that.
Surprise!
But first of all, I didn't think the book had much character development anyway.
You didn't?
No.
Wow. Okay.
I felt like let me give you some more structure for that comment. I felt like, first of all, it's young adult fiction, and I felt like for the subject matter, for the target audience, I felt like the characters were about as developed as we were going to get.
Okay.
But I never felt like, wow, I really know all these guys really, really well.
Maybe what I should say instead is there was no relationship development.
Okay.
Now, because I agree with what you're saying. I turned to Steve at one point and said, if I had not read this book, and you and I have already talked a little bit about the Gale thing, if I had not read this book, I really would have just thought that Gale was just some hot dude in District 12.
Okay.
Because there was no relationship development there.
Let me talk about Gale for just a minute, because you know what, Gale never did it for me in the book. In fact, I feel like the whole attempt by Suzanne Collins to create this love triangle, which I don't want to give any spoilers for the next two books, and I'm not planning on that with you, don't worry, but I do think that it was really bad. So I never bought into the Gale thing to begin with, and I felt like he was the least developed of the characters from the book. And I felt like that was true throughout the trilogy. So the fact that the movie glossed over him in the way that it did, it didn't bother me, because he was so insignificant to me as a reader. I never was enamored by him. However, I think that what the movie did successfully in replacement, okay, in order to appease the viewers, first of all, nice-looking young man who played the part, that was also true in the book as far as who he was. He's a very handsome young man, quite the catch in District 12. So I think that what the movie did with the actors that they chose is they did a really great job with their emotional acting, right, with their physical acting. And I think through that it was obvious, at least to me, that there's a closer connection between Gale and Katniss than with anybody else. It was also apparent that she didn't have this kind of close relationship or friendship at all with Peeta when they were growing up.
Right.
And so I felt like, to the best of the movie's ability, I felt like they laid a foundation for a solid friendship that exists between Katniss and Gale. I didn't feel like we lost anything in the translation that I needed anything more than that. What did you feel? What else did you feel?
Well, in the book, there's always a lot of conflict with Katniss trying to be forced into this relationship with Peeta. Sure. And so by not developing, and obviously her conflict is because Gale's back home. And without really developing that relationship, you kind of miss that.
Well, but is that really her conflict? I think that's a good question, but is it because Gale is at home and she's in love with Gale? Because I don't think Katniss has identified with herself yet as a woman who has these kinds of feelings. I think her conflict is over being forced into a relationship with Peeta that she didn't choose. And so I guess I disagree with that. I think that she has a very close relationship with Gale, and there's some questions that are brought up in her mind and in her heart because of what she's forced to accept or reject in the arena. But I don't think it's because she is dying to grow up and marry Gale. I never got that impression from the book, and I certainly don't feel like the movie glossed over and missed out on something there. I feel like Katniss is really searching for who she is as an individual and how she relates to these men in her life and what role they play for each other as opposed to it being a real love struggle.
Well, and her struggle too, and they did make this point in the movie, is when she does have that part where she's talking to Gail and she's like, I'm never going to have kids.
Right.
So I agree with what you're saying there. Is perhaps more of the struggle is the fact that she might be getting close to either one of them, but she doesn't want to because of the fact that she doesn't want this to be her life, the life that they have lived, in the district. So, and please, for everyone's sake, do not. I saw this pop up on another website. It was like, I almost flipped my lid. It was like Team Gail and Team Peter. I'm like, please do not make this another Twilight. That is so far. It's like if we have to be Team anybody, let's be Team Katniss, who
in fact, that's what it's all about. And don't get me started on the Twilight issue because I have really, really differing opinions than like 99% of
No, I'm right there with you.
So, anyway, I think that is, to me, this is actually the greatest point about this book and this movie is that it is an incredibly strong female protagonist. And I am, as a mother, I am delighted to have a female protagonist who is true to herself.
Yes.
Who has convictions, who understands, I think, not ultimately the impact that she has, but she's growing into that recognition and realization of self. And that she is always willing. She's courageous, she is brave, and she is gutsy.
Yes.
And I love the qualities of Katniss. And so if we were going to talk for hours about anything, it would really be about the strengths of Katniss. And in fact, I'd really prefer that as we go on in the next movies and things, that really the focus isn't about the men in her life. It's really about Katniss growing as a person and being wholly herself. And then ultimately deciding whether or not she wants to share herself with a man. But it's never about that from the beginning. And so I do feel like we need to make that distinction, at least for me. That's my opinion.
And my comment had always been, I think I even made this comment to you when we were in the mountains and you were finishing up the books. It's like, if I had to choose which one of the two quote-unquote heroines, because to me Bella Swan is not a heroine, it was definitely the role model would be Katniss, not Bella Swan. So we won't even go there because that is a whole different ball of wax. This kind of bothered me, and I don't know how you felt about this, and I don't know the relevance of it. I was talking to Jen about this later today, was the how the Mockingjay pen came to be. In the book, it was Madge that gave it to her. And as we talked through it, I could see how they could kind of get rid of Madge as part of the storyline. I don't know and again, no spoilers, but in the second and third, I'm sure they can drop the mayor piece into it. Madge is the daughter of the district's mayor, for those who don't know. And in the books, District 12. And in the book, she actually gave Katniss the Mockingjay pin, which in the movie, Prim picked it up in the village.
Right.
Significant? Or am I just nitpicking?
I think you're nitpicking. And here's the truth. I think anytime you take a book and translate it to the big screen, there are things that fall on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
There are characters that we had some sense of emotional attachment to in the book that don't even show up in the movie. And we go, oh, that's not fair because I really liked her because she was so whatever.
Right.
Well, the truth is, think about Madge. Did she personally propel the plot forward? It was the object that propelled the plot forward.
Yes.
It wasn't Madge. And in fact, Madge is very underdeveloped in the book. If you really stop and think about it, well, no spoilers, but what does she do? There's nothing that comes after that. That was really the only significant act that she contributed to the storyline, was the giving of the pin. And it was sweet and sentimental and nice in the book, but it worked fine.
Yeah.
She got the pin, and it all worked out in the end, and so she had the pin. I think, to me, that was the key piece. It's the token. It's not the giver.
True. In my mind... Haymitch was Archie Bunker. When I read it, my mind's interpretation was Haymitch was Archie Bunker. And it must have flown off my radar that it was going to be portrayed by Woody Harrelson.
Right.
I loved him. I loved Woody Harrelson as Haymitch. I bought it, and I was like, he was much better than Archie Bunker. And I really liked it. And I cannot wait because really Hamish's character truly becomes developed in the second book. So it was nice to see, you know, the subtle progression of going from Hamish the lush, you know, with covering the glass at the dinner table to, you know, not being quite the drunken stupor. That being said, I kind of missed the fact that he wasn't in the reaping piece of it, because remember in the book he kind of like fell off the stage in a drunken stupor and was the great, you know.
Yeah, hugged Effie.
Yeah.
On stage in a drunken mess. Again, it probably was filmed, is my guess.
Probably.
They probably filmed all of it and then ended up cutting it. So that's probably what ended up happening. They felt like, okay, it's nice, but we've got this really long movie and we've got to cut.
Something's got to go. Yeah.
Something's got to go. And so I think that's the thing you've got to keep in perspective is what, in order to get as much information in that's relevant, what gets cut. And that's just something it's not relevant.
Who is your favorite actor and portrayer in the movie?
I love Jennifer Lawrence. I think she has knocked it out of the park. I am so impressed with her. I feel like she brought Katniss to life for me in ways that the book didn't. And I feel like where the book was lacking in character development, this is where the physical acting of those who were portraying these characters was just so incredibly good. And Jennifer Lawrence was able to tap into an emotional reservoir that she has somewhere deep inside of her to really connect with Katniss and bring Katniss to life for us. I mean, think about all the different scenes, actually I was thinking particularly in the arena, but even in the reaping and prior to that, her thinking about her sister and those tender moments, even in their home and getting ready, how she truly is the caregiver for her sister and not the mother. These moments, there was no dialogue. It was all physical acting.
Yes.
And the reaping made me cry. I was crying.
Were you? See, everybody said that. I don't. Maybe I was just. I don't know. Maybe I was overwhelmed by the loudness of IMAX. I don't know. I thought it was good. I didn't cry. I definitely cried at the scene with Rue. But that was.
But it's another example. Again, it was physical acting. No words were said in that scene.
Yes.
And so I guess that's where I'm driving at with Jennifer Lawrence's portrayal of Katniss is that she really nailed it. And whether or not you cried at certain moments, I think also another one that strikes me was when she was in the tree and she had the wound.
Yeah.
Again, she wasn't speaking, but wow, did you feel her pain in that moment? But again, that's just quality acting on the part of Jennifer, and she was perfect.
I have heard critics say that had it not been for Jennifer Lawrence, the movie would not nearly have been as magnificent as it was.
I think that's true. I think that's, you know what, the casting across the board was excellent.
Yes.
I had really big reservations about Woody Harrelson. I knew he was coming. I was like, that's not really my vision of Hamish, but he was one of those surprises for me that really I was pleased. I think he was great, and I too am excited to see him progress, especially in the next movie. There's a lot of room for him to develop Hamish, who plays a much bigger role in the next storyline. I'm a huge Stanley Tucci fan, and I said this in my review. I watch movies just because he's in it, so I also have to give a shout out to Stanley Tucci because I think he's phenomenal.
And of course, my other reservation as I was watching this, and originally I had been told that it was going to be 3.5 years before the next one came out. Luckily, it's next year. It's November of 2013.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's November 2013, which is a good thing because when we left the movie, I was still thinking it was 3.5 years. I leaned over to Steve and I said, "My God, I hope Donald Sutherland makes it."
Okay, did you like him as?
I love Donald Sutherland. I'm a big fan of the Sutherland boys. Period. My world stops for Kiefer. So yeah, I love Donald Sutherland. I thought he gave President Snow. It was a perfect. He wasn't overly acting. He wasn't underacting. He was just President Snow, and I thought it was very believable.
I thought he would be fatter. That was kind of my only thing.
Yeah, kind of like my Archie Bunker with Hamish. Loved the scene where they're auditioning for the sponsors, of course, with, looking at the classic line with Katniss of "Thank you for your consideration." When she nails the arrow, it's just all around. There was nothing about. I'm looking at my notes to see what else we have. Interestingly enough, and I don't want to get too far into the second book, but the other conversation we were having today was Steve had read that with the way they filmed the killings, which was for obvious reasons, which was how they got away from it not being so gory, he won't be able to do that in the next movie. He will not be able to film it that way, just because of the set. Because, with the spoke wills.
Where Arena is located.
Yeah, that's going to be kind of interesting to see how they do that with all the water.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it, and I feel like the pieces that were left out for those diehard book fans who feel like, we missed this character or we missed this specific incident. My feeling is that those are pieces that were systematically and thoughtfully removed in order to progress the plot. I mean, you've already got a movie that's almost 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
You can only retain your audience for so long and keep their attention. And if you really step back and think about it, I feel like the details that were left out, they didn't lose anything in the story. And that's my feeling on that.
Do you think, because at one point I did say to Steve, as I mentioned, that had I not read the book, I felt like I would have been missing quite a bit. Have you, and I don't think I've talked to any, well, except for my eldest daughter who's only read the first third of the book. Do you think it was, and I always have this question when I go book to movie, would I have enjoyed the movie more had I read the book? Or would I enjoy the movie more had I read the book? So do you think somebody who had not read the book would miss anything?
It's a question I can never answer because I always read the book first. I did talk with one of my friends who saw the movie, and he thought it was phenomenal, and he's not read the book, and he wants to read the book now. So it's not a really broad cross-section of population, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that because I went into it knowing what I know about the books, knowing I was going to be comparing them, knowing that I was very interested in how they adapted it. There are other book-to-movie adaptations where I feel like I could give a better answer. I think you could enjoy it. Yeah. I think that anybody could go into the movie, and in fact, I said this in my written review, I preferred the movie to the book. It's never happened before.
Wow, yeah.
I don't know if it'll ever happen again, but I really did. I thought it was a really good adaptation. But I say that because I've read the book, so I don't know how others would feel. But I think it would be a movie that could be enjoyed without having read the book. Did
you see it in IMAX? Oh no, you guys don't have IMAX over where you are. So it was. I don't know if we gained anything by watching it in IMAX, except a headache from it being so loud. Yeah. Any closing comments on that before you assign us our book for the next month?
No, I just would encourage everybody watching this, give us some feedback. What did you think about the movie? Do you agree? Do you disagree with our opinions, our viewpoints? We're excited to get the conversation or keep the conversation going. If you haven't yet, read my review of both the book as well as the movie, both on 10to20.com, or you can find it on allarminda.com. So we're excited.
There you go.
Read it up just a little higher. We didn't.
Oops. All right. There you got it.
Higher.
Back.
Okay.
Back.
Okay. Perfect.
There we go. We will be much more high tech next time with our web addresses. At the top is 10to20's website. The next is Arminda's website, and at the bottom is my personal website, 4 Hens and a Rooster. What are we going to read? What's my assignment?
Okay, so here's your assignment. I thought long and hard about this, and actually not really, because I'm constantly reading young adult fiction, and my daughter and I are huge fans of Brandon Mull. Are you familiar with him?
Nope.
Brandon Mull, for those of you who have read, might be familiar with the Fablehaven series. And I wrote a review of that series on allarminda.com, but Brandon Mull has started a new series called The Beyonders.
Okay.
And so here is our next book that we're going to be discussing. It's the first in the series, and it's called A World Without Heroes. Again, the author is Brandon Mull.
And we'll post this on the 10to20 site as well as the Facebook page on 10to20. Yep. So to find any of that resource, just start at 10to20.com and we will ferret it from there. And we will further enhance our technological capabilities. And hopefully at some point we can have a big round call-in of some sort. You can also send us email. You can send us messages on the Facebook page. You can contact us through the website and any questions, and we'll fine-tune that piece of it. Give us a quick 30-second synopsis of what The Beyonders is about.
I don't know.
I sounded Canadian there. Did you? About?
All I know is that, okay, it is fantasy. So it's young adult fantasy, and Brandon Mull is a master at that. He's using words in this. Like, words are a key.
Words are good in a book.
Yeah, well, I mean that they are a key to solving the book.
Okay.
So I really can't tell you anything about it. I've read the jacket cover.
Okay.
That's the extent of it. It looked really intriguing, but because I'm such a fan of the Fablehaven series, I have nothing but high expectations and high hopes for this series as well. And in fact, when my daughter saw that I was carrying this with me, she said, "Hey, I'm not finished with that yet." I said, "I'm just going to show it on the video, so don't worry. I'm not taking it.
I'm not taking it.
Right.
So cool. All right. Well, I'm going to end the recording at this point, and thanks to everybody who watched. Please leave us comments. And